we're going into a stage where like you can't get away with mediocre content as easily as you could. You can't get away with mediocre ad copy because now the messaging has to really be on point to make sure that you're getting in front of the right people and activating them, getting the right ad with the right offer, with the right message in front of the right person at the right time for them to take an action.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast brought to you by Indiepreneur.io.
What's up, Indies? Welcome back to the Creative Juice podcast. This is episode 199. I am your co-host, Jack McCarthy. With me is my awesome co-host, Mr. Ed Isola. Ed, what's going on, dude?
I'm feeling pretty good, man. It's pretty cool. We're heading into the end of the year, and we've got 97 questions to answer from our community. So I'm excited, and I'm also proud of everybody that you guys are keeping the wheels going as we round out the year and not hitting the holiday slump, so to speak.
Yeah, me too, man. I'm really excited. In this episode, gang, we're going to, we polled, our listeners, our community, and we wanted to get just an idea of what are some of the burning questions that you guys have about music marketing, the state of music marketing online right now, and what might you like to hear us talk about? And we got some really, really great questions. So I'm stoked to dive into it in part one of a two-part episode on music marketing, your questions answered. I'm pumped to get into it. You want to do this, Ed?
Let's do it. It's pretty cool. You guys gave us a bunch of great suggestions and from high level down to the nitty gritty. So I'm super pumped to dive into it. So the first question we got was, how can you become a part of somebody's habits? Like, how do you become a part of their life as opposed to something they think about occasionally? How can you create experiences that allow fans to identify with us, which ultimately makes them a super fan? So it kind of sounds like the heart of this question is, one, how do you create super fans? And two, how do you become more than just an artist to somebody, which is a big question, but I think there's a lot of ground to cover here.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. And while I don't love the term super fan personally, I think this is a really great question. I have my thoughts on one part of this just to kick it off. Like, how do you become a part of someone's habits, right? I often give advice about this when it comes to things like creating content or live streaming or planning out your content calendar. And I think one of the easiest ways to become a part of someone's habits is to structure your content in a way that it recurs at the same time on the same day every week or every 2 weeks or whatever it might be. Take Creative Juice, for example. Our podcast comes out weekly and you can usually expect it on Tuesdays, and that's where you can listen to us. And for those of you who are mainstays listening to the show, hopefully it's kind of become a part of your weekly habit. The same thing can be true for your music. I think Facebook Lives or IG Lives or any kind of live streams is a really great example of this. But even going out of that direction and talking just about content. Back in the summertime, we had a guest on the show, Bruce Wigner, an artist, producer, and a good friend of mine. And we talked a little bit about what one of his previous bands did, where they had a video that they would release every Monday. They called it Riot Monday, and they would release a video every Monday on YouTube, and it became a part of their culture with their fans. And that really endeared people to them and became something that they thought about every single Monday. So it became like a chunk out of their week was dedicated to this band and their music and the stuff that they were doing. So that's just one really easy way, I think, that starts to take people from, just kind of being passive listeners or passive fans to being something that's a little more active. So that's one thing that comes to my mind. What about you?
Yeah, it's funny because as soon as we read this question, I wrote down consistency and authenticity. Like, you have to be consistent, like Jack's saying, and you have to be authentic. Before we even, like, you're using Creative Juice as an example, right? Before we even hit play, we were like, man, it's cool that we have this ability to come on here and really just, one, pull the community, and two, then just go on and talk about, what we think and what we feel. And it's consistent because it happens the same time every week, but it's not like we're sitting here reading from a script, right? Like, what you're getting listening is real-time feedback, which is, I think, what's super valuable is it's like, here's what I think, here's my gut reaction, here's my, my kickback on it. And even as a musician, I think that's what you have to do. You just have to be yourself, and you have to give yourself a structure so that people know when to expect you. But then once you're there, you just have to behave like you naturally behave. So that's where the idea of recurring content or live streams or recurring pieces of whatever is super important, because it sets the precedent that, okay, this day, this week, this time, I can expect to see this artist that I like, and they're going to talk to me. And then once you're there, you just have to behave naturally, engage with people naturally. And it's kind of almost like you behave as you will, people can take it or leave it, right? Like,
yeah.
As harsh as that sounds, it's not meant to sound harsh. It's just the truth around it. So I think that's one thing. But then, like, if you dive deeper into, okay, well, how do I become part of somebody's habits? How do I become part of somebody that they're going to listen to my music every day? They're going to tell their friends about me. They care so much about us that they're going to come see us at a show 8 hours away. That is just something that comes with consistency over time. And it's something that I've experienced firsthand, where, you know, we started with an album launch. And the second part of this question is, how can we create experiences that allow fans to identify with us? The permission offers and the album launches, those are great ways to have those kind of tentpole events and activities that can bring people into your ecosystem. And it starts the relationship, but that does not set the precedent for 4 or 5 years down the road, right? Like, we did an album launch, The Party, in 2017. Had that been the only thing that the 502s did, I don't think that many of those people would stick around for 4 years, right? It's because we did that, we got them into our ecosystem, and then every day since then, we've been engaging and nurturing live videos, emails, all that kind of stuff. I almost think that it's not these big tentpole events that create the lifelong relationship. It's the day after day showing up and being there. Like, you know, your friends or family. Like, if you only see your a friend every 3 years, sure, you guys are close. But if you see somebody and you show up for them day after day, that's how you know somebody has your back. And I think that's very similar to how fans start to get you ingrained into their life.
That's a really good point. I was thinking the same thing. Like, you can craft experiences for your fans that really help you to identify with each other as like a tribe, you know, and you build a culture around your music and your art. And I think that that's really important. And one way to do that additionally is, like, find out what common ground you have with your fans, things that you're interested in that they're also interested in, things that they like that you like, that you can then lean into. You know, I think we probably said this before on the show, but, like, for example, like, if you're super into Star Wars or something like that, maybe your fans are too. Or if they're not, you know, there may be ways to let them in and kind of seed that interest amongst your base. And that's really how you kind of grow common interest that then grows an audience that is identified under shared interests that aren't just, you know, around your music. But to your point, Ed, like, I agree. It's not just one experience that creates that identification and that bond. It's multiple, and it's, you know, it's showing up day after day, but also it's doing having multiple of these sorts of tentpole sort of events, you know? It's like you have milestones in life with friends and family and people that you like, and bonding happens over time, over all of those things, you know? Like, you could probably take out a pen and paper right now and jot down all of the things that you've done with, you know, your best friend. Think about the relationship with your fans in a similar kind of way, where can you identify the places where you made these big connecting moments with your fans? And if you have, then you could start to see, like, oh, these are the things that are causing my fan base to kind of have some glue to it. I think that's my feeling about it.
I think that's a great way. Like, we don't often use the term milestones and bonding, but it's very similar to the idea of nurturing. And I think that thinking about it as a timeline where, like, you do have milestones and in between you have bonding, it's like, I think that is a great way to portray it, because that's it. You become a part of somebody's habits and daily routine by showing up every day and being consistent and communicating over time. So it's not a flash in the pan thing. It's going to take a long time, like years, but that's how you get there. It's just by showing up every day for them in whatever way.
Yeah, you know, I can even think about this with some of my favorite artists. Like, I can think of the milestone events that I had with some of my favorite bands, like it's weird. A lot of these weren't necessarily crafted by them. Some of them happen naturally and others are, specific events that were masterminded and planned and marketed, I'm sure. But I can think about like specific tours that I went to, or the time that I experienced a live stream for the first time, or when I bought my first record from that band, or what came to me in the mail when I ordered a bundle of merch. Like all of those things, like they kind of stick out as moments in my experience of this music, this art that I like. Man, we're getting really getting kind of mystical about this, but I think that it's, thinking back personally as a fan of music, like I can identify these moments that like made me stick,
Dude, I think that's like a great way to kind of maybe wrap this question up. It's what you just said. There were things that weren't even crafted by the artist that made them a fan of you. So I think, and I'm thinking about it, I have the same exact experience where like I saw a band at a festival 4 years ago, and then I kind of loosely started following them, and then they put their first album out, and then they did, something cool, and then they did something else. And these aren't things that they were necessarily putting out for my attention or for anybody's attention, but it's like, oh, here's a cool show with this band or that band. And it's just like, if you get on somebody's radar and you continue to stay active, your supporters, they will pick up on things like Jack said, where it becomes significant to them because, oh, we went on a camping trip and my fiance played this song that was your song, and now I love you guys because after that I went. It's like you can't plan all these things by just continuing to put content out, continuing to be active, continuing to try to talk to as many people as you can, whether or not it's the permission offer tentpole that you're doing or some other thing. Activity and consistency, in my mind, is the thing that creates those events and those bonds over time.
Yeah, that's spot on. I love this question.
Yeah, that's a good one.
This next one is for you, dude. I'd love to hear Ed chat about how he took his band's success on TikTok and try to get those folks off platform to monetize, to get them to sign up, to take them to the next level or the next stage of the buddy system, so on and so forth.
Yeah, so this has been really interesting, and it's something that we're still continuing to test and experiment with on a lot of different fronts. But I mean, the things that have worked really well for us, obviously, we have a little bit of a following on TikTok, and we've done a couple of things that really don't stray too far from what you would expect me to probably hear or to say rather. The first is that as soon as we had a video go viral, we updated the link in our TikTok bio to pretty much include, and you can go click on it right now. I think our TikTok is at the 502s. Our bio, if you click on it, it's a link tree type page that we made ourselves so that we can kind of customize a little bit more for different links. But we just put the link in our bio. We didn't even say anything, but it just says, music and more info. It kind of points down to it. And it has our Can't Feels Good opt-in. It has our text number. It has our store. It has our streaming. It has any link that you can think of, our tour dates on that link. And what I found is that the first thing people on TikTok want to do is either one, go to your streaming or go to the link that's in your bio. Just organically, they're going to do that. They're going to take some action if they like you to kind of see if they want to learn more about you. So the easiest one, is basic as it sounds, is having a good link in your bio has been something that has worked really well to get people from TikTok either onto our text or email list and turn people into customers as well. So that's been really good. And then the other kind of interesting thing that we've done, there's kind of two more things that I can think of. The first is we actually posted, after we had our first video, we actually posted a opt-in video, I guess you would call it. It was an opt-in creative, like 15 seconds of me pretty much saying like, hey, here's our album. You can go grab it for free at the link in our bio. So it was directing people to Can't Feels Good, telling them what it was. And I think the day we posted that, we got like 200 or 300 emails and 70 orders or something like that. And these were orders for our little tripwire that we have in place, but it was like tripwire plus the free CD order bump. I think we still pulled in, a couple $100 and a couple hundred emails just for posting this one TikTok. So it got less views, it got less likes, but the community that was interested in it saw it, went and took action immediately. So very simple. If you have opt-in creative and you have a following on TikTok, that was a great way to do it. But the core idea in my mind was like, let's get people off of here as much as we can. So we posted those videos. We sent them to the link in our bio on our page, which has our pixel on it. So now they're in all of our retargeting ads and stuff like that on different platforms. So those have been two like really good things for us. And then the last is kind of ties into the next question, which we can more clearly define in a second. But it's something that we just started about, maybe a month ago, is like I was saying, people on TikTok, they seem to go to streaming of their own accord. So we put up a Spotify canvas behind your songs that plays when people listen. It just says, text us at a phone number that we got set up. And I think that's been set up for maybe a month. And we have almost 600 or 700 phone numbers on there right now. And we haven't really done anything in terms of saying like, hey, text us this or text us that. It's been people that have gone from TikTok to our Spotify and saw the number and text us. And it's pretty cool too, because like kind of talking about how you make someone, last question, your lifelong habit, people will text us in from Spotify saying like, hey, not really sure what this is, but just thought I'd text it. And then we answer, they're like, oh, dang, this is pretty cool. You have a little conversation. Now they're more invested.
Yeah, for sure. It's one thing I wanted to note is like where TikTok hasn't expanded yet is like into the ability to retarget your organic followers or your organic video views yet with TikTok ads. That functionality isn't there yet. So the return path isn't as easy as like, I'm going to put together a retargeting ad and, follow up with these people. So the hand-to-hand stuff that you guys have had to do has been really interesting and I think fun to watch, especially when it comes to the organic sort of post that you did about your album launch, and certainly like all the stuff that just kind of dovetailed as the viral successes happened with people kind of going places on their own accord. I'm really interested to see what will happen when TikTok ads evolves into a place where you can, retarget off of the engagement on your profile that is organic. Really, really interested to see how that kind of evolves and plays out.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be a game changer, but to your point right now, it's like there's no wrong way to try to engage with people because there is no return path. So like pretty much my rule of thumb for TikTok has been, if it seems like it might work, let's try it and see. So it's like, okay, maybe we should start dropping comments saying like, hey, go check the link in our bio or whatever. But those have been the things we've kind of done that have worked, but it'll be exciting when there's the capability to actually retarget for opt-ins or sales or whatever we want to.
I guess fortune kind of favors the experimental when it comes to TikTok. I think it's super interesting. That was a great question. Speaking of SMS and text marketing, we had a great episode with Jordan Lawrence from Community a couple weeks ago. We'll link to that in the show notes too, just so that it's in here. Just like a great deep dive into text marketing, but kind of a follow-up to what you were saying, Ed, about building your text list. We got a great question with a couple parts to it. When it comes to permission with text marketing, do the same rules apply as email marketing? You had mentioned like putting your phone number on your social profiles and asking fans to text, which is great and works well. However, if a fan texts, can you just add them to your list and then send them future messages? Does that count as permission in the same way that you have to get permission to someone to send someone emails, like through a sign-up form? I think this is a good question and definitely worth clarifying. One, it certainly depends on where you live because there are laws in place around business to consumer text messaging. TCPA is a set of regulations in the United States, for example, that states what a customer or a prospect or a human has to do in order to give you consent to text them. And it does require express consent. With Community and what you guys were doing, I know that when you text a Community phone number, the first text message that happens is an opt-in text, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So with Community, as soon as somebody texts you, they have to fill out a form that essentially one gives consent, but two fills out all this information around name, age, city, all that kind of stuff.
So that's one way, like very similar to email marketing in that way, where you could even drive traffic to a page like that. I have driven traffic to opt-in pages that instead of collecting emails are collecting phone numbers, and they have a submit button and a disclaimer about signing up for texting and what's going to happen and that you won't spam them. So yeah, that's definitely important. That's the kind of stuff that counts as permission. Same kind of thing goes with like texting a keyword for XYZ permission bribe. Oftentimes what happens on the back end of those messages is, if you're trying to be like super duper compliant, is a message, with the thing somebody wants, and then saying like, if you don't want to hear from me, you can always reply stop. That's the kind of thing that you often see when you're signing up for stuff via text. So that's the sort of thing that comes into play when it comes to getting permission to text. One thing I think is important to note here is a lot of SMS platforms won't actually let you add someone to your list without express permission given in some of these ways. So that's something to, as you're digging around for what platform you might want to use, that's the kind of stuff to be looking out for.
Absolutely. And that kind of segues nicely into the next part of that question, which was, what are some affordable SMS platforms? After listening to episode 195, I looked into Community and their pricing starts at $99, which seems a little bit expensive when starting out. Are there other options? So there are definitely other options. And Community actually also just introduced a $49 a month tier, which is actually what I'm using currently. It holds up to, I think, 1,000 subscribers. So might be worth something looking into. I definitely agree 99 was a little bit high, like for taking a chance on texting, but there is a $49 tier as well there.
Yeah, totally. I know like price is definitely a consideration. And to be honest, like I personally don't have a text marketing platform that I outrightly recommend like I do with some other platforms. I'm pretty agnostic when it comes to this sort of thing. But some other platforms to check out that you might want to take a peek at that are affordable. Simple Texting is a platform. I believe they start at like $25 a month for a certain amount of credits. Easy Texting is another one that is a credit-based text marketing platform. There's Fan Connect, which some of our clients at IndieX have actually used. And that is based on you pay a certain monthly price for a phone number and for a certain amount of credits. I believe that starts as low as like $5 a month for a very limited number of credits, but you could toy with it and get started. I've also heard of another platform called Textedly. I think that starts at $25 a month also for around 1,000 credits, which a lot of these sit at like when you really boil it down, like the 2 to 3 cents per text. So yeah, those are just a few to check out and look at. Actually, it's funny. A few weeks ago, Ed and I were exploring some of these options for 502s together and just kind of kicking around the different benefits and stuff like that. To that degree, we did look at Drip also, which has a text marketing, SMS marketing functionality in its CRM as well. I don't currently recommend Drip for SMS marketing because I believe at this point it doesn't allow you to do the same degree of features as far as sending broadcasts and setting up automations as platforms like the ones that we just mentioned do. So Drip is kind of off of my radar personally when it comes to text marketing, at least for now. That feature is kind of just being built out. Maybe you have some more context on that too, Ed.
Yeah, I was going to add something around the Drip, which was that it's in progress right now, but currently you're not able to have back and forth conversations either.
Oh, it's not two-way.
It's not two-way, right. So that's coming. Talked to their support and they said that's coming, but it's not currently two-way, which is definitely a limitation there as well. All the platforms that were just outlined, they all pretty much do the same thing. What you probably want to do is go in and think about two things. One, like how are you actually going to use it? And two, which platform has what you need, right? For us, it was really important to me to be able to, one, have very easy communication, both through a mobile and desktop app, which Community had. And then they also had some features around segmentation and stuff like that, which were really important to me personally, knowing that we were going to use it for touring or stuff like that. So, you got to kind of think about what you're going to use it for and then decide based off of there. But like Jack said, I like Community, but I don't have any hardline preference where I like Drip for email, right? It's kind of an exploratory realm a little bit. So it's a little bit of trial and error where you got to go in, play with it, get a free trial, see what you like, see if it works for you, and then go from there. But all of those options are really, really great options to at least start with as an exploratory point.
Well said. I think like defining the features that you really need. For me, I'll just to put it out there, like the features that I think are important to me, segmentation for one, integration with other platforms. Being able to integrate with your store is important to me, just as one example. I think additionally, the ability to do two-way texting is I think that's kind of a non-negotiable. Otherwise, the nurturing aspect of SMS marketing kind of goes out the window. I definitely think that that's important. Other than that, I think the ability to do keyword-based automations, keyword-based opting in is really important. Those are kind of the big ones. Obviously, price is important. Like you can spot like a scam miles away. And, just to be totally like transparent, a lot of these SMS marketing platforms out there are run off of another platform called Twilio. A lot of them use Twilio as their back end as far as actually sending the text. They're just built using Twilio, and then they are essentially reselling the ability to send text back and forth. And they put it into a nice package platform. Twilio is a heavy developer platform. But knowing that, price out like where things are appropriate and where they're not appropriately priced based on what the features are and what it's actually costing per message or per credit. So all things to think about. It's an interesting sort of evolving space. Like I said, I'm not married to any one platform personally, so I have no dogmas or doctrines to lean on when it comes to this.
Yeah, absolutely. But they should give you some good insight in terms of at least a place to start exploring, because it sounds like you're interested in SMS, the asker of the question rather, and just dive into it and kind of see. Maybe you'll uncover some good stuff to share with us as well.
Yeah, definitely. Two questions here that I think are really, really solid and also kind of related with each other. So let's dive into this. Can we summarize some of the changes that have happened with Facebook in the past year and some best practices around them and how they might have changed or been modified? And the follow-up question, which I think is related into what we're going to get into here, is I'm seeing people say things like the era of pixels and third-party tracking are coming to an end and that iOS 14 was just kind of the tip of the iceberg. Is there truth to this? And if so, what kind of time frame? What's the impact that is having on Facebook and Instagram ads and overall strategy moving forward? And man, that is a loaded set of questions.
Absolutely.
So let's just talk about this kind of like open here. We've talked a little bit on the show about everything that's been going on with iOS 14 and Apple and Facebook and how it's impacted advertising. And that's been some of the biggest changes that have happened on the platform in the past year. So let's just to unpack that a little bit. For anyone who might be listening for the first time and hasn't gotten into advertising, maybe all that heavily, or you're seeing all the big scary ads or headlines about Facebook advertising being dead and that sort of stuff. Back towards the end of last year, towards the end of 2020, there were announcements being made about Apple implementing some privacy changes onto the iOS platform. So the platform, the operating system that iPhones and other Apple devices run on. Essentially, what was going to be occurring was that now, instead of apps on the Apple Store being allowed to track you or track your activity across websites, instead of that being something that was automatically turned on, it would now be an opt-in process, starting with the update for iOS 14.5. So what a lot of people saw is around April of 2021, I believe it was, when that update came around and started getting rolled out, if you went to use the Facebook app, you would get hit with a little pop-up that would say, allow Facebook to track you across websites, ? And a little describer as to how it helps personalize your user experience. The setting was set to opt out by default. If you didn't see a pop-up like that, it was just automatically set to off with this update. Basically what that means is that when you are looking at Facebook ads and being taken to websites, if you decided to say to Apple, no, please don't let this app or that app or any other app track me across websites, that information, though it would be sent back to the platform, they would not be able to use that information for the purposes of optimizing ads or reporting on ads or giving that data to anyone using the platform. On the business purposes side, the advertiser side, seems interesting and scary, right? A lot went on, a lot about the platform changed, and Facebook made changes to sort of adapt for this. what that looked like was, for one, it allowed for basically a new type of event prioritization to happen, which is called aggregated events management. And this is one of the best practices that we've taken away from this. Is basically what's happening here is if someone is an iPhone user and they say, no, I don't want Facebook to track me across websites, whatever they're doing on the back end of a website, whether they're, opting in for your email list or purchasing, if they've decided to opt out, Facebook can't use that data on the events that they're taking. Seems kind of like a privacy wall almost. Facebook can't feed that information back to us as advertisers as effectively. And what's interesting is Facebook put, for one, like I said, a set of measures in place to allow for some of that. They're basically able to now model that data based on these aggregated events measurement tools that they put in place. So in the back end of Facebook, you can actually tell Facebook, for people who have opted out through the ATT prompt, which is the Apple tracking prompt that pops up on your phone, what you can do is you can select the events that are most important to you, and Facebook can still report to you on the highest priority events based on modeled data that they put together on these users. This allows you to get some visibility on iOS users that have chosen to opt out. So basically what you do is you go into the back end of Business Manager and you select based on the website events that are installed. You might select, for example, in your store, you might select purchase, add to cart, initiate checkout, lead, view content. You would select these events, and that would tell Facebook, these are the events that I want to prioritize for iOS 14 opt-outs. That's best practices point number one. You have to set that up. Before you even do that, you actually have to verify your domain, show that you own your domain to Facebook so that you can deliver ads to iOS users. This was a big one because it caused a lot of confusion. A lot of people had headaches. They were like, I don't know how to verify a domain. Ed, how many client accounts at IndieX do you think we verified from like December of last year to May or June? It was, yeah.
Every single one, 20 or 30 of them.
Yeah, crazy. And that was just, month to month, kind of just running through the list. Anyone new who onboarded, that was something that we were working through and helping figure out. But you have to go through and essentially install a piece of code that says to Facebook, I actually own this website and I'm allowed to advertise with it. You do that in the back end of your business manager. So that's the first step that you take as far as best practices go. And then setting up these aggregated events allows you to actually have some form of tracking model data on opt-outs through iOS 14. The fallout of these changes has been pretty vast. I think the number was, I would have to look at the most recent number, but I believe that it was saying only about 10% of users actually chose to stay opted in. And how this impacts the Facebook ads platform is that data that we had on that Facebook had rather on who was doing what, who was taking purchase actions and who was taking, subscribe actions, or who was looking at products but not buying, was, disappearing amongst Apple iPhone users, iOS users. That data was being, degraded over time. We were losing that kind of visibility. So it limited the platform's ability to optimize for these sorts of events or actions in a reliable way, which had a massive impact on lots of different kinds of businesses, especially businesses that run cold traffic for purchases, for example, like an e-commerce store that sells, trinkets or clothing or surf trunks or you name it. Think about all the things that you can buy online. A lot of these direct-to-consumer type brands definitely felt a big impact. So that's just two quick little best practices regarding just the technical setup of what you need to be doing to ensure that you can, track with some sense of accuracy, or at least be able to deliver ads to people who are on Apple devices. Now, in terms of how this impacts artists, this is what I wanted to touch on a little bit here, because like the second question to ask, is this going away? Or is this just the beginning? I personally believe that we are going into the world of a privacy-first internet in a lot of ways. I think that iOS 14 is just the beginning. We've started to even see changes with how email marketing can be done with iOS 15's rollout. So I think that we are just seeing the tip of the iceberg. Google is going to be rolling out some privacy related changes within the next year. So yeah, I do think that it's just the tip of the iceberg. But I think what's interesting here, and Ed and I were riffing on this yesterday actually, is about how creatives, artists, musicians, painters, filmmakers, you name it, kind of anyone who is creative and is a content first business are at a solid advantage with this, because a lot of the audiences that we build up are built on the backs of the content that we share online. So if I didn't freak you out enough with all of the techno babble, just hear this as a bit of a calming voice. If you run Facebook ads for your music videos, for example, or your short Instagram story ads or your Reels ads on Instagram, those users who are watching your videos, who are engaging with your profile, who are engaging with your page, those audiences are not affected. All of the iOS 14 related changes are all related to people that are going off platform. So they're going to websites. Those are the audiences and the actions that are being impacted heavily by everything going on with these changes. So all of that said, a lot of the front end work that we do in terms of building an audience is related to our content. So having content that does a great job of attracting people and getting them involved and getting them, building up a retargeting audience, an engagement audience that you can then reach back out to, that's largely unaffected by this, which is great. I think artists are at a huge advantage here. And that's kind of what I wanted to touch on the most with this is a time to really be non-negotiable about the type of content that you create. What were we saying the other day, Ed? Like being native first and being really native minded about your content is so important.
Yeah, we were just talking about how you have to be like, you have to put your content first, and it has to be that good, for lack of a better explanation. Like you've really got to, we've talked a lot about like fan finders, obviously, and making sure that your content fits the platform that people are viewing it on, whether that's Instagram or Facebook or TikTok. You just have to make content that doesn't have to be like everybody else, but it has to be great quality, great audio, great video, unique. Like that's a big ask, but also for everybody that's creative, that's like an exciting challenge. And, I think that you just gave a great rundown and probably also a great overview of how everyone probably feels about this, which is, oh crap, this is not good, followed by, okay, it's going to be okay. You know what I mean? Like, there are a lot of reasons for concern, but at the end of the day, like you said, creatives have the ability to still stand out, and a great piece of content is still the first piece, right? Like, the follow-up question here is like, how does this impact your overall strategy moving forward? And this has now been rolling out for, 3/4 of a year that it's been in place, like you said, from April or so. And I have not experienced any true deviation in the overall strategy. Like there's technical differences like you were talking about, but okay, here's how you can monitor and here's what you can't monitor. But the overall buddy system strategy, it's still the same. Great piece of content at the top, engage with those people, and then get them onto your list. You have to get more creative in certain ways, and you have to resort in a lot of instances to, tracking personally has been the biggest pain for me. Like any semblance of tracking within Ads Manager has gone out the window in terms of anything related to like leads or purchases. So I've had to rely a lot on Google Sheets that are pretty much saying like, here's how much I spent. Here's how many people have been tagged with the opt-in form. Okay, therefore my cost per lead is actually this. Oh, look, that's half as much as what Facebook's saying, that kind of thing.
Yeah, let's just touch on that for a second, because I think that's important in terms of like overall strategy and how this has impacted it, right? Now your source of truth more than ever is your CRM, however you're defining that, whether you need to be tracking based on tags and knowing how much you're spending and then putting it into a spreadsheet, or whether it's looking into a CRM that you actually have, whether it be Drip, or whether you're looking in the back end of Shopify. Really, like your endpoint is your source of truth. Relying on Facebook ads reporting for something like sales just isn't cutting it anymore. And you can use things like UTM parameters to try and shortcut the processes there, but that goes down a big rabbit hole that I'm not going to touch on right now. There's a lot that you can do in that space as well, as far as like setting up UTMs and using Google Analytics to sort of try to mitigate some of the tracking mess. There are also plenty of platforms out there that claim to be the solution for iOS 14, and it's just not true. At the end of the day, really, your source of truth needs to be your CRM or what's happening on the back end. So, you're looking for opt-ins on whatever you're collecting opt-ins on, and you're looking to see how many of those they are and comparing them against your spend. You're looking at your sales numbers and your sales volume, and you're comparing that against your spend. And you're comparing that against the results that you see in Facebook versus the results that you see maybe in email, for example. Really, I think it's kind of going back to the basics of looking in those places and relying less on the reporting that we're seeing. Also, at the agency, an approach that we're taking in a lot of cases is relying less on just looking at Facebook ads or Instagram ads or whatever it might be and saying with perfect certainty that this is where the results are coming from. And we're taking more of a blended approach to, if we're running a sales promotion, for example, we're looking at all of the sources that we ran traffic from, looking at these smaller KPIs of those, like your click-through rate on your ads versus your click-through rate in your emails, knowing the sizes of the audiences that you are emailing versus the reach of your ads, and just taking a comparative approach that way, and then saying, this is how much I spent, and this is how much I made. And yeah, it's a higher level, like I said, more blended approach to attributing data, but that's really what we're working with these days. So strategically, that's kind of an approach that we're taking and looking and leaning more and more into as time goes on, because it's really just what we're working with. There's also delays. There's delays related to all of this. There's up to a 3-day delay in data attribution in Facebook ads. So if someone makes a purchase, that may not be reported to you for another 3 days. So again, this comes back to like the source of truth being your back end, whatever you might be calling that, whatever your CRM is, or however you're making those calculations. So that is one, I think, very important kind of best practice. It hasn't changed, but the way that we use the tools in front of us certainly have like evolved a bit, and we do kind of need to zoom out a bit here. So that's kind of a bit of the lecture. But back to your point about content, Ed, yeah, I think exactly like you were saying, like we're going into a stage where like you can't get away with mediocre content as easily as you could. You can't get away with mediocre ad copy, because now the messaging has to really be on point to make sure that you're getting in front of the right people and activating them, getting the right ad with the right offer, with the right message in front of the right person at the right time for them to take an action. So a lot of the shortcuts that advertisers were able to rely on for years past have kind of gone out the window a bit.
Yeah, I think a good way to kind of phrase it is like direct marketing was not invented because of Facebook, So direct marketing's been around. Facebook was a tool that made it a lot easier, but the tool's kind of changing. So you just have to, the overall strategy doesn't change. The tool just changes a little bit. So you've got to adapt. And like Jack said, some of this holistic viewing of your ecosystem or a promo, that's great. It also helps you get more in tune with your data, which probably is good as you go forward. But, don't just abandon direct marketing because Facebook's changed.
I think that's a great sort of manifesto to wrap that set of questions up, because there really is no time frame that I could confidently give and say like, this is when all the privacy changes are going to happen. Something new could be announced tomorrow. The landscape is changing so fast. The impact is changing so fast. Facebook is still making adjustments and optimizations and changing their toolkit to help marketers evolve through this stage and adapt through this stage. So it's just a matter of being agile, but also knowing like, where's my source of truth? What am I doing on the content side and the creative side to make my marketing as good as it can be? And that's really what you're working with. So I hope that helps to answer the question in a succinct way without being too techno-babbly. I think we'll wrap up this episode with that question, and we've got a bunch more that we're going to cover in next week's episode. I'm stoked to get into it. You guys rock. Thank you, Indies, for listening. Thank you for your awesome questions, and we will see you guys next week on Creative Juice. Peace out.
East Coast, West Coast, say what?